Yes.
So we don't quite know how long this is going to take because the questions came in thick and fast, but I reckon we get straight into the meat of the sandwich, don't you?
Go, man,
And
go.
there'll be no necessarily particular order. This is largely in the order of how they've come in from different Facebook groups.
Yeah.
And they'll get straight into some technical stuff. There'll be some more, I guess, subjective questions as well. But let's see how we go and look to try and keep it within 40 minutes or so.
Yeah.
So the first question that came up was one from one of our mutual friends, Helen. And she said, or she asked, is it possible to add a new build timber frame kit extension to an existing traditional stone building? And if so, how easy is it? And would you recommend this over traditional building? So it's kind of three questions in there. Sneaky.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the quick answer is yes, it's perfectly possible. I've done it myself, but an extension on my own house was actually a sun lounge, and I did it with timber frame. So perfectly possible, done all the time. What I would generally suggest is that to engage the services of a local joiner who can actually make the timber frame on site, because generally it's not something that the manufacturers would be interested in doing because it's generally too small and the transportation costs would be uneconomic. But no, perfectly possible to do. It can be a quick way to actually build an extension because the block work is taken out of the critical path. So you can build a timber frame. It can be up, wind and watertight in no time at all, and all the other trades working inside. The one thing that you have to do is, given it would be a different construction from the existing building, you just have to make sure that there is a movement gap between the existing building and the new, the extension, because there is differential movement. Different materials move in different ways dependent on the, the thermal movement. So, you'd have what they call a movement joint between the existing building and the new building.
So I guess to her final part of the question about would you recommend it over traditional building, there would be a degree of it depends.
It depends very much on the extension, but in general terms, yes, it would be certainly beneficial to do it in timber frame. Speed, the benefit you get is speed and thermal efficiency are the two biggies you get with timber frame.
And cost-wise, would it be?
Cost-wise, there's not an awful lot much
okay.
in terms of end of the day, there wouldn't be an awful lot of difference between timber frame and doing it with brick and block. But I think in terms of time, most definitely timber frame would be quicker than doing it in brick and block, and obviously it's less impacted by poor weather conditions.
Yeah,
if it's in Scotland,
it's a pretty key thing to consider.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So we're off to the races. That's the first question addressed. So moving on to the next one from Barry. This is almost like a quick fire series of questions, Mike. It's literally a this or that. So part one is basement or no basement?
It depends. It very much depends on the site conditions, but two, it would depend on what sort of floor area you're looking to achieve. Because if you've got a site that is a fairly small footprint, and the only way you can achieve the accommodation you wish to achieve is by having a basement over and above the floors above the basement, then yes, that would be the way to go. But what you have to consider with any basement, it tends to be expensive because not only are you having to retain the ground, you're having to keep, the water out of the basement as well. So it is, in terms of pounds per square foot, basements are always more expensive than anything that is above ground.
Yes.
Yeah, so as I say, it very much depends on what you're trying to achieve. It's not just, a yes in every occasion. You'd have to look at it very carefully.
No, I think that is perfectly acceptable in this case. For only considering this, we can't have a binary black or white with a lot of these things. It's going to be site by site, location by location, subjective preferences, and so on, budget. So the next one he asked.
Sometimes as well, it's basement can be worthwhile if you've got a particularly sloping site, because obviously as you're digging it out, you're maybe just as well creating a basement or a semi-basement. It doesn't have to be a full basement.
Yeah.
Semi-basement, because just to take advantage of the slope of the site.
Absolutely, because then it's only part of it that is somewhat underground that you need to retain and protect. The rest might have a great view for all we know.
Absolutely.
Next one, is simply solar panels, question mark.
Solar panels, yes, but solar panels, I mean, there are really two types of solar panels. There's solar thermal, or there's what they call photovoltaic. And photovoltaic is generally the most popular in that they provide, get the benefit from the sun, the solar gain, and they actually generate electricity. So it generates electricity, obviously, when not necessarily when the sun's shining, but when you've got quite bright skies. So they can use that to heat your domestic hot water. So in effect, that's free energy.
Mm-hmm.
So you heat the hot water, keep it in a store, in effect, a big hot water cylinder, well-insulated hot water cylinder. Then you can draw off that water as and when it's actually required. You can actually be used for everything else as well. So you could, have your washing machine or tumble dryer or any other electrical equipment that you want to run that is maybe fairly heavy running costs during the day whilst it's generating the electric. And then anything more than that can actually be fed into the grid. And it used to be the case that you were getting fairly good returns on that.
Yeah.
But that's been diluted and diluted and diluted. So it's less of a, it's less attractive than it perhaps was. But yes. Okay.
But still worth it?
Still worth it. In fact, by building regulations, in some occasions, you will have to provide some form of renewables. And the most common renewable is photovoltaic panels.
Okay. And they work in Scotland?
Yes, absolutely. It's a bit of a misnomer. Yes, no, it doesn't have to be bright sunshine for them to work, So, it's a bit of a misnomer. Obviously, they do work better when there is bright sunshine, but it doesn't have to be always bright sunshine. And they will definitely work.
Good. So there's maybe a bit of a myth about having to be like the California or Arizona sunshine for it to be effective. We can still get it with our hazy skies of Scotland.
Yes, very much so. Very much so.
Okay. I was having a bit of fun there. Okay, the next one he was asking, sliding doors or bifold doors, flush fitting or raised?
Right. I think in terms of bifold doors is, I don't know whether people would know what bifold doors are, but they're basically the kind of doors that concertina together to one side or maybe to both sides. So you've got an open aspect out into the garden. So generally it's to try and bring the garden into the house, if you like. So you've got that barrier-free big opening. In principle, they're fine, and they do certainly, provide that kind of vista, if you like. But the problem with them is they've got a lot of moving parts, so they tend to require a fair bit of adjustment over the, when they're actually being used. And because it's in effect two doors that are coming together, they tend to have quite a lot of framework, so it cuts down on the amount of light that comes in. And they're not cheap. I mean, you're roughly talking probably about, for each leaf door, you're probably talking about the best part of £1,000 per leaf.
Right.
So they're not a cheap alternative. You can quite often achieve a very similar appearance by having like a patio door, but a bi-parting door. So rather than the patio door sliding one over onto the other, it actually slide away from one another.
Yeah.
So then you have a big wide opening, and you can have glass panels each side of that if you want to have more glass, but you can have big wide openings. I mean, I remember we've supplied ones that are kind of 12 feet wide sort of thing. So depending on how wide an opening you want, you can certainly have that. So from a cost point of view, I would always suggest sliding doors rather than bifold doors. And again, from a performance point of view, I would generally suggest either French doors or patio doors above bifold doors.
I think that's been a really helpful answer to many people, even doing some adjustments to their existing home to
for extensions.
Extensions, yeah, exactly. I think that's great advice. Again, this one might be more subjective, but he's asked, in relation to the new build, where to buy the kitchen?
Where to buy the kitchen? Well, I think if you're a member of LNPG, as us as property investors, most of us know that, then LNPG have got very good deals with the magnets. So that would certainly be worth a look. You can go into these very expensive specialist kind of kitchen suppliers. So again, it depends on what type of kitchen you're actually looking to achieve. But certainly, like LNPG, using magnet kitchens are a very cost-effective solution. And kitchens is something that probably have a fairly limited life, and that people are replacing them a lot more common than what they maybe did in, years gone by. So do you really want to be spending 50 grand in a kitchen? Or would you be better spending 10 grand and then replacing it in, 5
Yeah,
years' time?
that's a big consideration, isn't it? I mean,
Absolutely.
some of these bespoke kitchens over 6 figures, it's it can be as much as a house.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yes. I mean, I've been in situations where people have actually, when I was in the timber frame game, people have spent more in their kitchen units than they have in the fabric of their house.
Yeah,
Crazy. Absolutely crazy.
that's all, and it's all personal preference. So hopefully that's of some guidance. So the next one's another technical one. Marilyn has asked, I'd love to know your opinion on underfloor heating.
Underfloor heating has certainly become a lot more popular. The benefits it has, obviously, is it leaves your walls completely free of, you don't have any radiators, so you can position your furniture wherever you want to position your furniture. A lot of new builds, the self build in particular, a lot of people are doing underfloor heating, and it can be a very cost effective way of doing it when you're building new. Maybe a bit less so if you're trying to install it within an existing building, because it becomes a bit more complex in that situation. But no, it's certainly increasing in popularity, and having actually stayed in houses that have underfloor heating, it's a very, very comfortable heat. It's generally, heat rises, but if you're cold, generally it's your feet it's cold. So if you keep your feet warm, generally the rest of your body is quite warm.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah. And the other thing is, there are different, you can have, it can be powered by electric, it could be powered by hot water and, and pipes, or it can be done with infrared. You get infrared heating now as well, which is a kind of different form of heating, but you get infrared mats, which can be a very cost-effective way of installing underfloor heating.
And would you have a preference between what people would refer to as the wet system versus some other kind of electric heat pad?
Well, I think it goes back to really what's actually creating the hot water. So, if you're looking at putting in a heat pump, and by that I mean a ground source heat pump or an air source heat pump, then probably a water-based system might be better. If, however, it's electric, and electric gets a bit of bad press, but you'll probably be aware that as of 2025, you're not going to be able to install gas central heating, because that's going to be barred. So I think you'll see more and more people will actually move to electric forms of heating. So my own personal opinion is that the electric will become a lot more the norm than it has been in the past. It's always been perceived as being an expensive form of heating.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. But